Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of DEMOFEST, 7 Habits of Stunningly Successful Demos with Peter Cohan. DEMOFEST is hosted by Consensus. We help pre-sales teams to scale with intelligent demo automation. We are recording this session and we'll be posting the links to the recordings in about 2 weeks in the Scaling Pre-Sales and Sales Engineer LinkedIn group. So we encourage you to join the group, and I'll paste a link to that group in the chat window in a minute, just so that you have the direct link for that as well. Peter Cohan's the founder and principal of the Second Derivative and the Great Demo methodology, focused on helping software organizations improve their sales and marketing results, primarily through improving organizations' demonstrations. So he has experience as an individual contributor, manager, and senior management in marketing, sales, business development, and as a member of the C-suite. Without further ado, I give you your presenter for this session, Peter Cohan.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and stop your screen sharing. There we go. So let's do a couple of quick checks. Tell you what, if you can hear my voice using the chat dialog box, open it up and type in voice or something similar so I can see whether or not you guys, there we go, it's working. And if you can see my mouse in the upper left-hand corner, type mouse or left corner or something similar. All right, that's working. How about bottom right-hand corner, type bottom right or something similar. Mouth. You guys are funny. Terrific. All right, gentlemen and ladies, let us dive in. First of all, I want to thank Consensus, the organizers, for putting this together. This is a terrific Demo Fest, first ever. Clearly will be an annual process. It would be my expectation. And Kevin O'Brien did a terrific job with the keynote this morning, where he talked about intelligent demo automation, which is what, of course, Consensus does. And by the way, just as a small piece of background, Darren Hess and I first began to communicate in August 2014. So the relationship with intelligent demo automation now is nearly 6 years in, if you will. So with that, and without any further ado, let's dive in. Gentlemen and ladies, using the chat dialog box, how many of you would say that you are average with respect to your demos and demo delivery? If you're average, type average. If you think you're less than average, type less than average. If you're better than average, type better. Well, a lot of average. Somebody typed meh. I love it. Okay, so pretty much a lot of people are saying they're average. Well, I have terrifically bad news for you then. All of you who say that you are average may be at risk. And here are a couple of claims that I'm going to make. Number one, traditional demos are average. And if you're good at being average, well, that's terrific if that's all you want to be. But I'm going to claim that average is insufficient to do what you need to do in the world of business and software sales and software buying. Average is insufficient. And Penelope wrote, way, way, way above average. There you go. And along similar lines, traditional practices, therefore, are average because they are traditional. And Kelly says, let's be honest, I'm awesome. We knew it, Kelly, all along. And along the same or similar lines, average, once again, is insufficient. So this segment is all about moving beyond average. And the best way to move beyond average is to be able to understand what you're doing, how to change, and measure the results, and then iterate. So this session is all about data. What we're going to be talking about in the next 45 minutes or so is all about measuring, testing, making changes, and repeating. And for full disclosure, I'm trained as a biochemist originally, so I am all about experimentation. And for anybody who is in that arena, one of the biggest things I got a chance to work on just around the turn of the century was something called combinatorial chemistry and high-throughput screening, which is all about many, many, many experiments. So let's dive in a little bit further. Let's talk about practices and best practices, because we are moving away from traditional practices, as Kevin O'Brien noted, to the digital world. Well, we are moving to data-driven pre-sales intelligence, and as it says here, data-driven intelligent actions. So we're talking about intelligent discovery, intelligent demos, intelligent POCs, intelligent analysis, and thereby we'll have data-driven and, if you will, real best practices that fall out from that, and that's part of this session. We are moving from, this is the way we've always done our demos, which is what we hear over and over and over, to our demos are a critical opportunity to make positive, continuous improvement and change. So if this resonates, somebody type, everybody type, resonates, yes, and how, yay, or something similar in your chat dialog box so I can see if you're on board. All right, excellent. Somebody just used the QWERTY keyboard. Excellent. So from the standpoint of being practitioners, you cannot achieve best practices if, number one, you don't know what they are. Number two, you're not provided examples of what good or great looks like. And number three, you don't have the coaching and support from your management to improve. And from the standpoint of pre-sales leaders, exactly the same thing is true. You cannot develop your team, and by the way, yourself, if you don't have the data on which to act or upon which to act, and you don't know what to track and how to measure, and you don't have a good sense of what is average versus good versus great. So with respect to best practices, well, let me ask you guys this question. With respect to best practices, would you say you have an opinion as to what the best practices are in the world of demos? If you do, type opinion or yes or and how or something like that. Okay, everybody has opinions and how. Well, I've got bad news. Best practices are not based on opinions. They are based on data. And with that in mind, in fact, the true best practices are based on a lot of data. How much data, I hear you cry? Somebody type into your chat dialog box. How much data? Let's see it. Never enough, Kyle. I love it. All the data. Okay, not all the data. But how about millions of data points? So 6.23 gigs? No, that's a little more than we have here. So we're going to be referencing a series of studies that were done. The primary one comes from the fine folks at Gong, who about 2.5 years ago released a study of 67,149 recorded demos, which they connected up with closed versus and progressed versus not closed and progressed businesses, and teased out, using AI and machine learning, a number of key success factors. That study, or those studies, I should say, have now been expanded, are well over 3 million demos. Everybody say, whoa, because that is a lot of data. So type in whoa if you would. There you go. Excellent. Oh, nice emoji. Second study that I want to reference is from the fine folks at Consensus. And in fact, the session that will be taking place an hour later, and if you will, to my right, so on the other track, we'll be talking about their 2020 report, Sales Engineer Compensation and Workload. And some of the data comes from this one as well. And it is a terrific report. I urge you to join that session. All right, gentlemen and ladies, let's talk about what great looks like. We spent a few minutes with the first agenda item, which you didn't even know we were doing. Let's talk about what great looks like. And Brian, are you available to unmute, if you would?
I sure am.
Hi, Brian. So Brian is our Brian. Go ahead and share your video if you're willing for a second. This is
Sure
totally a
thing.
surprise to him. He had no idea we're going to do this. So Brian, congratulations. Brian is a pre-sales manager of a moderately large B2B software company. Everybody, thunderous round of applause. You can type clap, 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 please, in your chat dialog boxes. There we go. Excellent. So Brian is my potential customer. Brian and I met a week ago, and we had a delightful discovery conversation. And what I learned is that he said his top-level challenge is that achieving his quarterly and annual quotas are fundamentally at risk. And he said, along the same lines, some of the other KPIs upon which he is measured are at risk. And Brian, is that accurate so far?
That is true.
You have to say, by the way, you just have to say yes through this. This is an easy dialogue.
That I can do.
I believe what you told us, you told me, is that you've got extremely limited pre-sales resources. It's very, very difficult to clone folks these days. And it's not so much that they're limited resources, but their time, you said, is really at risk on being wasted. I think you said there's too many wasted demos, there's harbor tours, and far too many no-decision outcomes that are consuming much too much of the team's time. What makes it even harder, you said, is that you've got insufficient visibility into what is going on in the associated KPIs. Everybody says they're very, very busy, but it's difficult to track and understand what are they doing. Are they really, using, if you will, the pointy bit of the spear? Additionally, you said it's really difficult to coach. It's the Wild West. Everybody's doing their own thing. And you said in many cases, people don't know what they don't know. They're unfamiliar with some of the other practices. They simply are unaware there are other ways to do some of these things. I believe what you said you were looking for is some way to ensure that your team does sufficient discovery before going forward with a face-to-face demonstration to customers. You said that's one of the biggest single problems. Next, you said you wanted to align demos with customer needs. You wanted to be able to track and act on the key performance indicators that you've been tracking and want to track. And finally, you wanted to find much better ways to coach people in towards, I should say, demo best practices. When we talked about value, you said you're under pressure to increase what are known as technical wins, somewhere in the order of 10 to 33%. And you said you need to cut unqualified, let's say, wasted demo time by on the order of 50%. We talked about timing and a value realization event. You said, I need to have something in place by the end of this quarter, by June 30th, so that I can begin, if you will, with a baseline at the beginning of Q3. And from the standpoint of value, the first time you said you could declare an internal win is when you heard some of the first improvements reported by the team. So, Brian, let me just check. Is my understanding here all correct, sir?
That is correct.
Terrific. And has anything changed since we spoke last week? And you have to say no, of course.
Nope, still the same.
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that. What you're looking at here is a very interesting report. I'm going to use annotation tools. So on this left axis, we've got, if you will, or I should say you have, your current forecast numbers as you're going up the y-axis here. And then for each person on your team, you can see very, very rapidly what they're doing. So prospecting, discovery, documentation, and so forth is all shown here in the different colors. Blue is discovery. And if you'll note, you've got this person here, let me erase, this person, Aaron, is doing a freaking terrific job with his overall forecast or her overall forecast. And it looks like they're doing, or this person is doing a terrific amount of discovery, and it's a good balance with the other activities. Whereas Dominique, who's clearly a new hire, has really only done one thing during this whole time. Similarly, you have somebody here, James, who's begun to dig into the process. But what's missing from his, Lola, let me ask you, what's missing from his profile here? And I'll give you a hint. It's this color right here, which is?
There's no dark blue.
There's no dark blue, which is?
Discovery.
Discovery. And everybody's already typing in the chat dog box. So that having this breakdown will enable you to be able to see, number one, exactly what's going on, and number two, take action with your individual team members to coach, to guide, to train as needed. So you can then effectively begin to reduce, well, to increase the amount of coaching that can take place, if you will. This second screen is a complement. This tells you where everybody is spending their time. So here is a sum of hours for each of these different time slices. Excuse me, again, at the bottom you can see how people are spending their time. Interesting, this is the only week that any research was done, for example, in red, and on and on. And again, you'll be able to use this to determine, well, where are people spending their time, where's their time be consumed, and therefore how you can then manage the team. And we're hoping that this and the next thing I'm going to show you are going to enable you to drive your win rates up by 10 to 33% and reduce some of your wastage, if you will, on the order of 50%. This final screen is a screen that will enable you, it's a tool that enables you to see what is being presented by your team members, track things like their talk to listen ratio. So here in green you can see the prospect actually spoke more than our rep Richard, which is terrific. Here you can see how that tracked, here you can see me go to the next slide. Here you can see how this tracked over time, and right down here you can see actual specific words that have been flagged to help you guide your individual pre-sales folks on how they're performing. So we hope these things will help you be able to achieve the objectives you're looking for of reducing wastage by 50% and increasing your technical wins on the order of, let's say, 10 to 30%. Is this the kind of thing, Brian, you might have in mind?
Yes, I think this looks great.
By the way, would you like to see something like this in action?
Absolutely.
And actually, for the audience, how many people are interested in looking at what these tools are? If you are, type in yes, please, or something similar. Because James has already asked it, what tools using this? Well, these are two terrific tools of a list of 4 I want to highlight. So I want to thank Vivin.com, here's their logo here, who made those first 2 screens. They have a fabulous tool. Refract and Gong, I showed you a screen from Refract, they enable asynchronous coaching to take place. Gong is the folks that did this original study that I talked about, and of course Consensus provides a lot of the data that we're talking about in the next session. So big thanks to these guys. All right, Brian, you're off the hook. Thank you, sir. So what you just saw was a very brief example of the front piece of a great demo. We reviewed the customer situation. We showed them end results that are designed to engage them, get them interested, and begin the process, if you will, of a conversation. So let's look at some details. Let's talk about these 7 habits for stunningly successful demos. So how many of you who have ever been on the customer side of the table watching another vendor's demo? If you have, type yes or customer or something like that. Amen. Yep. Okay, lots and lots of people. So how many of you, how many of you have ever felt like this gentleman right here? How many of you have ever felt like they were out of alignment with what your real needs were? And how many of you ever felt like they were, as it says right here, lost in the weeds? Well, gentlemen and ladies, I have surprising and delightful news. It doesn't have to be that way. Everybody type yay in your chat dialog box. Okay. So 7 delightful habits for stunningly successful demos. Numero uno, well, you guys can read, so I'll just let you take a quick look at these 7 items, and we're going to introduce each of these in detail. I should say just skimmingly. Number 1, first of all, the data comes from the study of 67,149, actually now 3 million, I should do that again, 3 million recorded demos that have been analyzed. So we are talking about a data-driven process here. And what we're really talking about are key elements of a methodology that have been delightfully validated by these studies. So numero uno, you can read it right here. And I know I hate to read slides, but I'm going to anyway because it is so important. Everybody read this out loud with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ha, 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 I made you read it. And it is true. To give you an example, far too many live demos, strangely enough, are like bringing a patient to the hospital. The patient presents to a doctor. Here's a very frightening doctor. Doctor says, what seems to be wrong? The patient says, I'm not really sure, but I've got a lot of pain. The doctor says, terrific, pain's what we're all about. Here's what I want you to do. Go down to the pharmacy, try one of everything that I show you here, and report back what works. That's known as the Harbor Tour. That's the traditional overview demo. That's let me show you everything I possibly can in the hour that we have. You let me know what looks interesting. This is a recipe for disaster, and it's been proven. What you're looking at here is something called the elements of a situation slide. 6 delightful elements that when captured in discovery will give you much higher success rates in your resulting demos. And that's what I just went through here as an example for you all with Brian. So you have a situation slide with those 6 elements. Guess what, everybody? Key demo validation element number 1. This is from the Gong study. You can all read this yourselves. It should be reasonably obvious, and I'm just going to circle this because it's so ridiculously easy. The best and most successful demos, were found to effectively mirror and present what was learned during discovery, which presumes that you actually had to do discovery to get there. Everybody type, of course, in your chat dialog boxes. Thank you. Absolutely. All right. That's, if you will, pre-demo discovery. It is still the single most important element of any sales process. Let's talk about the number 2 idea, and that's a crisp review of the customer's situation. So once again, here's this thing called a situation slide, and that's exactly what I did with Brian, is I spent about 2 minutes, maybe a little less, and did a crisp review of his situation. Nothing about me, the vendor, no corporate overview. It's all about whom? It's all about the customer. And guess what? The Gong study found, they actually called it Act 1, the contextual overview. They found that a brief, crisp review of the customer's situation, usually lasting less than 2 minutes, is one of the recipes for the most successful demos. And it makes sense because you're like a doctor simply saying, hey, before we take you into this room and start to saw off your left leg, let me confirm that my understanding is all correct. And by the way, all of you, please type the words, it was my right leg that needed to be amputated, because that's what you might find. All right, how about this one right here? Anybody who suffered through a great demo workshop, please type do the last thing first and put 17 exclamations after it or something similar. But let's talk about this. Do the last thing first. Somebody in the chat dialog box asked me what time it is. Somebody asked me what time is it. Oh, thank you so much, Kyle. I knew I could count on Kyle. Time is one of the most interesting subjects that we could actually take a look at. So let's dive into time right now. So in order to actually manage and work with time, let's first talk about a clock, because that's how we actually consume time. And as it says here, a clock is an instrument used to indicate, keep, and coordinate time. The word clock is ultimately derived from the Dutch, Northern French, medieval Latin, and Celtic words, of course, from the word klagen and cloca, meaning bell. But you know what? In order to really understand time, we need to understand how time is measured. So time, as you can read here, is a part of a measuring system used to sequence events, to compare durations of events, intervals between events. And you know what? If we didn't have time, everything would seem to happen all at once. But to really understand time, we need to take a look at how time is metered and measured. So here are a series of different escapements, which is a favorite old way of measuring time. There's vertical, there's horizontal. Of course, the most accurate and most useful are pendula, as you see with this GIF here. And of course, to understand pendulums, you really need to understand pendulum math, which can be best expressed in this differential equation, d squared theta over dt squared plus gamma over lambda sine theta must go to 0. But of course, as we all know, this is in a system where energy is not lost to friction and air resistance is non-existent. And Kyle, what was the question again? Oh yeah, what time is it? Well, it's 8:22 a.m. Pacific time. So now what am I modeling here, ladies and gentlemen? Does anybody know? Type it into your chat dialog boxes. Yes, this is the way we in pre-sales often explain things. You want to know what time it is? Let me tell you how watches work and how to build a watch. So what we're talking about instead is to turn things upside down and do the last thing first, so the customer can see what's in it for them right up front, right away. If it resonates, as we were trying to show with Brian, they may begin to say, okay, that looks interesting. Now how do you do this? And that then leads to the rest of the demo. And guess what, folks? Right here, the research revealed, and you guys can all read on your own, but wait, there's more. Just keep reading. And wait, there's more. And this is the part I really like. Everybody type, yay, clap, 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 clap. It's one thing to know in your heart an opinion that something that you have presented or suggesting is effective. It's quite another to have it validated with 3 million data points. All right, diving in further, let's talk about this thing here called inverted pyramid. How many of you are familiar with this ancient piece of technology here? If you are, type I'm familiar, or I remember these from last century, or what is that, or whatever you'd like to write. Notwithstanding, Diana wrote, I'm old. What is that? This is the physical paper equivalent of a web page. Anyway, newspapers have been presenting information for several hundreds of years. That's cute. Michael says original iPad. Several hundreds of years, and they've learned some intriguing things about how to do it. So, for example, when you picked up a newspaper, how did you decide which article you wanted to read first? What did you do? Type it in your chat dialog box. What did you scan for? Yeah, pictures. Pictures are designed to grab our attention and draw us in. You don't start in the middle of an article by reading the detail. You look at the photo, and if it's intriguing, and by the way, that's like the first couple of screens in a demo, you read further. And in fact, newspapers organize information in their articles. If you think about it, do you read the entire article all the way through? Tell me yes or no. And the answer is generally no, or it depends on how interested you are. Newspapers organize information in an article in what they call, does anybody know? Well, let's just go to the next slide and I'll answer the question. It's called inverted pyramid, and it's a fabulous way to introduce information because what it effectively says is the very most important information is presented at the very top of the article. As you go deeper and deeper, you're getting to, let's say, moderate level of detail. And as you get down to the bottom, you're getting to very, very fine and granular series of detail, or bits of detail. So, Doritos. So the real question then is, how could you apply this to the fabulous world of demos? Everybody type exactly the same way. So type it exactly the same way. That's the way we should organize our demos. You put the most important things right at the top because that's what they're most interested in. And if you organize such that the least important things at the end, if you run out of time, what are you going to lose? Everybody say the least important stuff. So guess what? This is one of the things we teach in Great Demo Methodology. And, whoosh, yep, as the study said, the most successful demos start with a conclusion, and the most successful demos do not save the best for last. As it says here, they begin with the most valuable part. Everybody type, aha! And we have a question about the concept of differentiation. Best time to differentiate is in discovery. All right. Peeling back the layers, gentlemen and ladies, let's talk about what happens next. You've reviewed the customer's situation. You've shown the most important thing. You've organized to be able to present the most important stuff and go deeper and deeper and deeper. Let's talk about peeling back the layers. And what we're really trying to do here are two sets of things. So number one, as it says here, you're trying to effectively provoke questions with just enough information. For example, if somebody asks you in a demo, can it print, what should you answer? If it does. Yes. What should you not do? Explain how the printing works. Show them exactly. What you would do is you'd say, yes, it prints. Is that sufficient, or would you like to see more? That is how you begin to peel back the onion. And again, once again, it's been validated in this study as one of the best approaches. By the way, what happens if you peel back an onion too far? Somebody type into your chat dialog box. You cry, exactly, so don't. No more onions. All right, one more on peeling back the layers. What we're really trying to do is turn this demo from what most customers perceive as a fire hose, furiously flinging features and functions, which is frankly very frightening, to turn things from a fire hose to a, somebody type it into your chat dialog box. Yeah, a funnel sponge. Okay, no. A two-way bidirectional conversation. Somebody typed a misty shower. That is not correct. No, you want a two-way bidirectional conversation. I've heard some people talk about demo skills where they try to avoid questions. I know many, many, many traditional demos suffer. Well, let me ask you guys the question. Have you ever done a 1-hour overview demo? And at the beginning you said, I want to make this interactive, so we'll ask questions along the way, but every time you got a question, you thought, darn it, this is going to keep me from being able to show everything I need to show. Ha-ha. So instead, we want to turn this into a conversation. And in fact, the most successful demos enjoy what are known as speaker switches that take place. Well, let me ask you guys the question. Speaker switch is where you are presenting versus the prospect is offering a question or a comment or an observation. How long, type in your chat dialog box, how long do you typically talk before you get some kind of response from the audience? or you ask for a response. How many minutes? 2 minutes? Paul, you're terrific. 3 hours, Nick. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds. All right, you guys are better than average. The Gong study found that the most successful demos enjoyed speaker switches that took place on average every 76 seconds. So if you've been talking more than about 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, you are at risk. Now this is on average, and all it needs is somebody to say yes, no, or any kind of response, but those speaker switches are what you're looking for. Everybody type aha in your chat dialog box. All right, and guess what? Once again, validated, superstar reps are bombarded with questions compared to their peers. In fact, they enjoy 28% more questions than they might get if they were following a traditional approach. Questions are what you want. You will know your demo is going perfectly when the audience is asking the questions you hope and expect they would answer at, they would ask at that point. Everybody type, oh ho, that makes sense. Gentlemen and ladies, last idea on 7 habits, and then we'll talk about some bonus material, and something called transition vision. And I'm going to be honest and say that it's not specifically called out in the Gong study, but it has been proven in some other studies. So when you look at how people buy and implement, here's the process that people often go through to implement before they go live, all these steps, okay? So the question that one can ask is, when does somebody get value out of the software? Is it here? Nope. Is it here? No, it's actually one step beyond. It's the point where they are able to declare one small internal victory or win, and that's called a value realization event. We teach how to discuss and uncover those in our demo trainings. And guess what? Whoops. Those reps, those people that invested about 12.7% more time to these kinds of discussions had more success once again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's 7 habits for stunningly successful demos. A couple of additional comments here. Let's talk about some demo metrics. So what you see here are a range of demo metrics come from the fabulous study that was done by Consensus. There's some really scary things. This one right here should make everybody frightened. Here are pre-sales organizations with no metrics. That's really scaring. But let's talk about this. Many organizations measure activity. And I'm going to ask the question, is activity better? And the answer is going to be, I don't think so. Here's some numbers from one organization. They measured and said they had 1,400 wasted demos versus 480 wins. Another organization had a 65% no decision rate. So if you just turn the crank faster in this, are you going to be doing better? And the answer is resounding, well, maybe, but you're going to be effectively throwing away, in this case, about 2/3 of the time that you are investing in these activities. So instead, contemplate the denominator. And there's actually one measurement here that is an example of that. And by denominator, I mean, for example, measure revenue dollars per demo. That gives you a very sensitive understanding of efficiency and productivity. And you can look across your overall organizations, regions, sales teams, sales individuals, pre-sales team, pre-sales individuals. It is a delight to be able to track and actually measure what's going on. If we have questions on this, we can come back to it. And you're not just improving, if you will, the cranking speed, but you're actually changing the nature of the flow and, to a certain degree, the deliverable. All right, we're going to talk about 1 or 2 small items. How many of you suffer from no decisions? Type no decision if you do. Yeah, everybody does. All right, here's a fabulous tool to help you reduce no decisions. It's called the situation slide. Because on the situation slide, there are 3 elements that, if they're missing or incomplete, may result in a no decision outcome. Any guesses as to what they are? Just type in your chat dialog box. From this column here, there are 3 that, if they're missing or incomplete, what might be the first one? Well, I'll give you the answer. It's a critical business issue, because people will live with the hell that they know forever unless it is attached to a goal or objective that is at risk. That's number 1. Number 2, Lee, you got it. It's the delta. If you don't show sufficient value, people cannot justify the change. And the last one should be pretty straightforward. When do you need to have a solution in place? Meh. If they don't have a critical date or critical event associated with making a change, it probably is not going to happen. All right, finally, I want to offer 1 or 2 insights on discovery, and then we're going to have time for a few questions. So, how many of you have heard of BANT? If you have, type in BANT, B-A-N-T, in your chat dialog box. There you go. All right, BANT stands for budget, authority, need, and timeline, and it is awful. If you've ever been on the receiving end of a BDR or an SDR asking you about this kind of stuff, here are the answers that we as customers give BDRs and SDRs. Well, of course I have budget. Oh, yeah, I'm in charge. I'm the one who's making this decision. Oh, yeah, I am suffering big time, and we need this yesterday. That's the words that come out of the customer's mouth. But what's really being said is budget. Well, not really, but we'll get it if we need it. Happy ears, absolutely. Authority, well, I'm part of the team. Do you have a need? Well, we've been living with this hell forever, and so we're comfortable with it, but I am exploring. And what about timeline? Well, no, we're just exploring. So discovery is a process, well, you guys can read it right here. And there are, if you will, different types of discovery that people talk about, but very frankly, discovery is a conversation. And the conversation needs to be done for 2 entities. Brian, let me bring you back on here for a second, because I'm going to go slightly over and cut into our Q&A period with your agreement, but I think this will be useful. So Brian, you present as a patient to a doctor. So here's doctor number 1, and you think you have the flu, and I'm going to play doctor number 1. And you come to me and you say, you think you have the flu. So tell me you think you have the flu.
I think I have the flu.
And strangely enough, it's been going around. Everybody has it. You work at Consensus. I'm going to write here a prescription for Fluvigon, a fabulous new flu medicine. I give you the script, the prescription. And for everybody in the audience, 2 questions. Number 1, how did you feel about that interaction? And number 2, what's the likelihood you would get that prescription filled and take those pills? And Brian, what would you say?
I feel like there wasn't much discovery, and you just assumed I knew what I was talking about.
Okay, and everybody in the audience is agreeing with you. Okay, so you go to hospital number 2 to present to doctor number 2, who I just realized is wearing surgical scrubs, which would make me a little bit concerned, but fine. You present, you say?
I promise it's just a flu, I think.
No, you say, I think I have the flu.
I think I have the flu.
And I said, yeah, it's been going around. I'm doctor number 2 now. How long have you had it?
Probably about 3 or 4 days.
And have you been running a temperature?
Yeah, on and off.
How high?
Just over 100 at the worst.
Just over 100. Okay, and have any aches and pains around?
Yeah, lots of aches.
Okay, sweats?
Yeah, especially at night.
Especially at night? Okay, well, that's your mortgage. Anyway, we go on for another, yeah, somebody says sounds like COVID to me. No. We go on for another 8 doctor minutes, which is a long time, and I prescribe exactly the same medication, Fluvigon. Now, same 2 questions. How did you feel about that interaction? What's the likelihood you get those pills and start taking them? Everybody. He's popping them high. Okay. And Brian, what would you say?
Much better interaction. Now I feel like you actually understand what my needs and issues are.
Yes, and the moral is that discovery is done for 2 parties. Number 1, it's done for the vendor so that we as a vendor can effectively know what to propose as a prescription or a solution, and it's done for the customer so the customer feels that we have asked sufficient questions to understand enough about our situation as a customer. And by the way, both parties should agree that no further questions are needed. Everybody type clap, 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 because this is coming to the very best part of this session, which is the end. We've done a lot in this 45-minute session. I just want to do a quick recap. Frankly, folks, traditional demos are average, and average is insufficient. Traditional practices are average, and average, once again, is insufficient. Best practices are data-driven. And that's what we're looking at. We are moving from traditional and opinion-based practices to real best practices. I presented a handful of them here, 3 million data points. I hope you found this useful. I'm looking forward to John Cook's session over and to the right in the next hour. If you want to get in touch with me, here are several different ways to go about it, particularly the stuff down here where it says contact information. I am delighted we were able to invest this time together this morning, this afternoon. Thanks very, very much, and I'll turn it back to Brian for any questions that you might want to surface at this point.
Thanks so much, Peter. Peter's truly professional. Let's give Chet some claps for his participation in this DemoFest. We have a lot of really good questions, so we're going to try to get through a few of these. We're going to start with one from Larry, who wanted to get some ideas, suggestions around encouraging data entry on these types of platforms, where obviously a tool is only as powerful as the data that's in it. What can we do to encourage people to make sure they're going through that data entry process?
By data entry, I'm assuming you're talking about activities and related. I'm just going to assume that. So 3 things. Number 1, if you're not doing anything at all today, you got to start tracking. You've got to establish a baseline. You have to decide what metrics you're going to track and begin to track them, because only then can you look at making changes. For those of you who are already using something like Excel, which is the number 2 element, I would urge you to check out the fine folks at Vivun, VIVUN.com, because the tool that I showed those 2 screens from, they make something that if you're a pre-sales manager, this is your dream tool for helping to manage, track, and make substantive positive change. So I hope that helps.
Great, appreciate it.
Next question, please.
Yeah, so Chris from the audience, talking about some of the demo automation tools that you mentioned within your presentation, just wanted to get your thoughts on how that might affect the idea of speaker switching and additional qualification and discovering, how that might be reduced in an automated fashion. Just some of your thoughts on that approach.
So I am a huge fan of the Consensus intelligent demo automation tools, because they help reduce, or in many cases eliminate, the overview demos, which are the demos that we do over and over and over, hence the term overview, that we could do in our sleep. We don't ask for any feedback. We're effectively just saying, here is a bunch of information. You can stop doing those if you're not having any responses from your audience. And in fact, what robo-demos, what Consensus does is they enable you to push those things back to the customer. The customer actually consumes them and enjoys them because they map to many of the principles that we've been teaching here in Great Demo Methodology, providing you then with some baseline discovery information on what they watched, what's they're most interested in. Check it out. You will see how this can help you then actually begin to refine the process and to enter discovery intelligently, enter demos intelligently, and move through these processes that way. So I hope that helps. It's a replacement for much of the stuff that we are asked to do, for which effectively, well, they fall into the bin of wasted demos and a lot of no decision outcomes.
Perfect. So another question from Kelly is the ability to get a copy of these slides, Peter.
Yeah, so send me an email, as you can see the address down there, and I'll be happy to send these slides to you. It's a little bit more than, I think, about 12 megabytes, so let me know if you've got any limits in your email systems. Thanks.
Perfect. Pam had a great question about AEs doing the first demo and how you can do discovery properly for your SEs, since they're not available to really go on that deep dive before doing their demo.
So we teach an idea called the vision generation demo, which is just enough demo to satisfy the customer's request to see a demo, but is in fact designed to move the customer gently but firmly into a discovery conversation. And actually what I showed you in the brief example of what hopefully great looks like are in fact the 2 key starting elements of a vision generation demo. And if you're interested, there's an article on our website, greatdemo.com, on the articles page called Vision Generation Demos, the Crisp Cure for Otherwise Stunningly Awful Harbor Tours. You're more than welcome to grab that article And if you have questions on them, I'm more than happy to answer them. Hope that helps.
Perfect. So we had a really good question from Christopher asking about the importance of giving company overviews at all, if you feel they're just a waste or if there is some value in giving a company overview in a demo.
It's largely a waste. Very frankly, your customer would not have invited you in for a demo in a virtual or face-to-face sense if they had not vetted you as a serious vendor. And therefore, it is a waste of their time and yours to flog them with traditional corporate overview presentations. We can go further down this pathway, but I'm just going to stop there for now.
I think that's great. So Michelle had a great question about the pyramid and just the idea of should it be different for each client or prospect and how you would approach that?
Well, the pyramid approach is the same. It's what you fill into the pyramid that's going to differ from prospect to prospect. So example of a CRM system. So if you've got people in marketing, salespeople, heads of sales, and sales operations, that represents 4 distinctly different constituencies, and therefore probably 4 different demos or different chunks to a demo if you've got all 4 people in the room. And therefore, if you're talking to a head of sales, the head of sales is most interested in the pipeline, the forecast, managing those opportunities, and coaching the teams. The salesperson is only interested in how is this going to progress my business to the next step. Marketing people are interested in running, managing, and tracking campaigns, and so forth. So those are, if you will, 4 different, I'm trying to draw triangles here, 4 different triangles, 4 different inverted pyramids. So I hope that helps.
Great. So I think we have time for one more quick question. I know there's a lot more questions, so hopefully those that still have questions can connect with Peter. He is a pro and a huge asset for us and for everyone to be able to connect to. Do you believe discovery has to be done prior to the demo, or at the beginning of the demo can it be done?
Oh boy, there is the $2 billion question. The most successful demos have discovery done prior to the demo. I'm going to offer 2 comments. That doesn't mean it has to be a separate meeting. It's simply the separate segments to the demo. It could be a week ahead. It could be the same 2-hour call. The moment you open your software and share a screen, you are now locked into the paradigm and the rigidity of what you can show and talk about with that software. Best discovery goes way beyond the software needs, the cultural needs, the business needs, and the moment you start to show your software, you are going to be fixed into, if you will, what's going on with that software itself. Very strong recommendation, do discovery before sharing screens. The vision generation demo strategy is a terrific way to offer quid pro quo without diving into your software. So I hope that helps. By the way, there's a lot of other questions here. If you want some of these answered separately out of the session, which is what we're going to have to do, again, just send me an email. I'd be happy to continue the conversation.
Thanks so much, Peter, for your time. Let's give one more chat of clap for Peter. What a great presentation. And just a reminder, as Peter had mentioned before, we do have other coming up in the next block. So we have, as Peter mentioned, the sales engineer compensation and workload study from our very own John Cook. And in track 2, we also have the 4 must-have moments in every successful sales demonstration. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. You'll be able to find the recordings within our LinkedIn group. If you are trying to find the invitation for these next tracks and you can't quite find them, you can go to DEMOFEST2020.com and find some invitations there as well to join. Thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Take care, everyone.
Good luck and great demos.